Hello and welcome to the Reviews Brothers. We are back looking at the A to Z of PS2 Hidden Gems, and here is the letter G. I'm saying this a lot, but I really didn't think I'd have this much trouble as I'm whittling down these lists to just 10 games. There's so many, it turns out. I've left out some that I love, including Gregory Horror Show, mainly because I have seen it in a few similar videos and I do try to show games that you don't tend to in other ones. Even without that game though, I think there's a decent selection here, and you don't often hear about most of them. So, how about I shut up, you press that subscribe button, and we take a look at some games. We are going to start with some first-person action with Gene Troopers. Here you play as a bloke who's been abducted by some evil aliens, who take humans, brainwash them, and then give them cool powers so they can be used as soldiers, which is actually a pretty cool premise. As you're going through the process, you're actually broken out by a friendly alien and, wouldn't you know it, a sexy big-boobed woman, thank God. Handily, you didn't quite have your brain washed, but you did get to keep the cool powers. So now you have to escape your captors and take the bastards down to stop them from carrying on this nastiness. The first thing that struck me was just how much this reminded me of Perfect Dark on the N64, mixed with a little bit of Time Splitters. But don't get too excited, this is nowhere near as good as either of those games. But it is still solid. Gameplay is what you'd expect. You get a variety of alien weapons, most of which have secondary fire modes in each level, and you're given a few objectives and markers that help you navigate to your objectives. Weapons range from laser pistols and rifles to rocket launchers and sniper guns, and I was really surprised at how well they all handled and how smooth and responsive all the controls were here. What is strange is that not all the weapons have a crosshair though, which can make aiming them tricky at times. There's loads of enemies all over the place, and they're often much tougher than you'd expect as well, and can take a few shots to put down. Also, they can kill you pretty quickly when they want to. In fact, some of the enemies are a real pain in the ass, and will kill you instantly, like the suicide blokes that kill you up with just one hit. I hate them with a passion. What I learnt the hard way is that there are no checkpoints at all in the levels here, which at first I hated, but then I realised that this is actually a game where you can just save whenever you want, which I do actually prefer when I remember to do it. You will likely die a lot at the start while you get used to it all, but being able to save every few minutes is appreciated, even if it does mean going into the menus all the time. The levels have a nice variety, and you'll explore alien spaceships as well as planets, and I'm surprised at how good it all looks. Granted, that might be because I bought myself a sexy Steam Deck, which does wonders for PS2 games, and I highly recommend it. But still, the design on the levels and characters all looks good. Again, very N64 rare. You even get vehicle sections, which are a little bit of a letdown, but hey, they are a nice change of pace. I was really surprised at this game. I don't think I've ever actually seen it anywhere before, and I wasn't going to actually include it. I'm now about halfway through the game and having a blast. Just remember to save. Superhero time now with Ghost Rider, and this is a very loose tie-in with the awesome movie starring Nicolas Cage. But thankfully the game doesn't actually follow the plot of the film, I don't think, and instead is its own thing, just sort of based on the character. It's a third-person action adventure with a heavy emphasis on combat. In fact, that's basically all you do in the game. There is a story here where Mephisto is being a dick and wants to kill Ghost Rider, so has a bunch of henchmen sent out to go and get him. But since Ghost Rider is basically an immortal god thing, it doesn't go so well. Gameplay here is fairly standard for this type of game, but it is done well. You go through a series of levels that are filled with enemies, magic barriers will appear, and you have to kill everything to get them to open. You've got a few weapons. You have your chain whip, which lets you do a bunch of cool combos, then you have your usual fists, and you've got a shotgun. Using different combinations of these keeps your combo meter building up. If you spam the same move over and over, then the combo meter depletes, so the game does a good job of forcing you, or at least encouraging you, to do a variety of attacks. The better your combo, the bigger reward you get at the end of the fight, and that is of course little yellow orbs that you can use to upgrade your stats and unlock new combos to get even higher ones. I'll tell you what is annoying though, is that these little orbs can sometimes take forever just to be collected. You can't just walk over them, you've got to wait for them to fly over to you, and sometimes it literally takes 20 or 30 seconds for them to actually just go into your stupid flaming skull. It annoyed me. Interestingly though, you'll meet some enemies that have a combo level on them, and they can only be defeated if you have a combo level that matches what it says. You can still attack them to build up the combo, but they won't take any damage until it's at the right level. And speaking of enemies, I do have to say there is a disappointingly small variety of them. Now, I've actually never read a Ghost Rider comic, so I don't know if these are monsters that show up in those, but for the most part you're fighting the same 5 or so types of enemy over and over. There are bosses, who I'm guessing are more from the comics as they have names, but I didn't recognise any of them, but that's not really that surprising. Actually fighting everyone though is really good fun. The camera is fixed most of the time, which can be a pain in the ass, and you can press the R3 button to make it go behind you, but you've got no free control over it, which is a real shame. And also, every few levels, you get to ride your motorbike. These are fun, if a little bit basic. You're always just going forward down a narrow corridor, but you've got a few attacks and will need to kill enemies and do cool jumps. I actually really enjoyed these parts of the game. It's a short game with only about 3 or so hours of gameplay here, and you do have to do a fair bit of backtracking once you get new moves to get to new areas. But if you ask me, for a game like this, that is a perfect length. The graphics are actually very good, with some great animation, and I do like it when you do the pennant stare thing that Ghost Rider does. It looks really cool. Definitely worth a look, as it's pretty cheap these days, and it's fun while it lasts. Fighting game time now with the Japan-only Gitaroo Den Breakblow Fist or Twist. What a name. This is a 3D one-on-one fighting game that is based on a manga, which you can pretty much tell from the start. Now, it's all in Japanese, so I can't really tell you what the story is, but it's not really important for this game. There is a story mode where you take your chosen character through the usual fights, but you do also have a few other modes as well, like arcade mode, survival and practice. If you've got a friend, you can even play with them as well, and they might just want to, because this game is really damn fun. Right from the start, you get an impressive 22 characters to choose from, and while I haven't tried them all, the half dozen or so that I have played as all played very differently from each other with their own fighting styles based on various real-life martial arts. There's boxers and karate men, judo chaps, and I'm sure a load more that I don't know, but the variety was really great, and it was so fun trying them all out. I definitely did better with some characters than others, and this Chuck Lewis boxer guy is my favourite that I tried, with his quick punches and dodges making for some really cool combos. The fighting here is easy to pick up and play, but definitely a game that you'd need to put time in if you want to master it. You've got 4 attack buttons as well as a block and dodge, and you also have a bunch of special moves and combos. These can be tricky to pull off, but they do work. It doesn't help that it's all in Japanese, so the move list were very hard for me to figure out. But even without these, I was able to get quite far and beat the arcade mode a few times. I didn't unlock any new characters from my few hours of playing, but there must be a few in there. Don't quote me on that though. As you fight, you can move anywhere you like, but it doesn't take place on a 2D plane, and it works really well. The movement is smooth and fluid, but you can still crouch. It just makes sense when you play. You'll get used to it. As you can see, the graphics here are absolutely incredible, probably some of the best I've seen on the system. The characters all look amazing, with some great lighting and shadows, and some of the polygons do look a bit weird, but I kind of like it. The characters are wacky, though there's a few too many in what are wearing the karate outfit things. What are they called? Geese? But I guess that's what the manga's all about, so what do you expect? But yeah, this is a really cool fighting game that I've never seen or heard of, but I'm digging it, and I want to go and check out the rest of the characters, and you should too. Giants Citizen Kabuto is a cool game that I remember seeing everywhere when it was released, but never actually played it until this video, thanks to a recommendation from that bloke Trev again, so thanks for this one, Trevor. Now, I'll say that this game is nothing like what I was expecting, though I don't really know what I was expecting, but it's really fun. Throughout the game you play as a few different characters, each of which is a different species, and each one has their own attacks and ways of getting around. You start as some space explorer alien thing that crash lands on a planet. You meet some friendly locals, and with their help you go and find the rest of your mates that also crash landed. It all plays out in third person, and as you play you access a load of new weapons. It's the usual selection like laser guns, rifles, rocket launchers, which is exactly what I said about Gene Troopers, but let's face it, with games like this you get all the same weapons. You also have secondary weapons like items like grenades, with health items as well that you'll find in the levels, and you can use any of these whenever you want by pressing R2, which is cool. You also get a jetpack which comes in very handy. The planet that you crashed on is made up of lots of small islands, and although you can kinda swim, there's things in the water that will eat you without hesitation, so you want to avoid the water and fly wherever you can. The jetpack starts off quite useless, but gets better as you're playing, letting you fly farther and faster. What's cool is that as you rescue your mates, they will follow you around and help you on your missions, fighting enemies and generally keeping you company. You can even give them simple commands. You do get a variety of missions, from having to just kill enemies to destroying bases, rescuing civilians, and so on. The variety is good, and what I like is that the game really makes it clear what you need to do. You even have map points to point out objectives, but this is never easy though, and the game is actually quite tough. There are enemies all over the place, and these are often really cool. The further you get into the game, the bigger the monsters become. There's regular enemy soldiers, but you also have to fight huge monsters, or giants I guess, as the name alludes to. You also get to play as a magic race woman thing, and even one of the aforementioned giants. I've played for about 3 hours and haven't actually unlocked these characters yet, so it's not a very short game. There's also strategy parts to the game where you have to build bases and gather resources, but again I'm afraid I haven't actually got to those parts yet. I wish I had more time. But even what I have played was really good fun. It's a hard game to put down. There's a crazy sense of humour in here which you never would guess from looking at the box art. The characters are wacky and most of the cutscenes are played for laughs, and it's full of comedy, and it's actually quite good. As you can see, the graphics are very good with some decent cool designs on enemies, and I really like the look of all the levels. The controls can be a bit wonky, especially the jetpack, but overall I had very little to complain about with this game, and it's going on my list of games to go back and finish.
Playing Gradius on the PS2. And I'm shooting things, would you like to shoot things too? Hello, I'm Beltbuckle Bill, and here are my thoughts on a video game. Gradius V, or 5, is a side-scrolling shooter released on the PlayStation 2 in 2004, brought to you by Treasure and Konami. I've not played Gradius 1, 2, 3 or 4, so I can't really comment on whether this is a shameless cash grab or a natural sequel. The plot, as I understand it, whoosh, bang, 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 zap, zap, boom, 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 zoom. The game actually tells you very little about the plot, but the internet says, you are Vic Viper, a fighter pilot, or maybe the ship, in the future, on planet Gradius, which is invaded by the Bacterians again, who want to death everything. As you travel through the game, a giant Bacterian ship arrives from the future of the future, along with Vic Viper, you, from the future of the future, and you have to do battle together. Then later, apparently other time travel nonsense happens. I haven't got that far yet. There are 2 modes, normal and score ranked. Normal has you blasting your way through 5 levels, whilst score ranked is endless waves of enemies as you try to accumulate the highest possible score. Enemies are nicely varied and consist of a mixture of robots and organisms. Some will try and fly into your face, others will shoot projectiles like the cowards they are. Smaller enemies take 1 hit, larger significantly more. The designs are clean and colourful. Backgrounds are simple spacescapes or giant spaceships, and while nothing to write home about, you don't need them to be too busy, as there is a lot going on already. Your ears will be treated to a cacophony of sounds from bangs, zaps, booms and zooms galore. The musical score is simple enough and non-offensive. Replayability comes in the form of having 4 different ship types. They all look the same, but the upgrades differ. They range from speed-ups, double shot, lasers, missiles. The different types fire the missiles in different directions. Rear shooting, force fields, and having multiple buddies that sit above and below you, adding extra firepower. When you run out of lives and continue, you can change type, and you can choose to upgrade whenever you want to a degree. Each time you pick an upgrade token after killing special enemies or a group of enemies, your upgrade option changes, starting with speed up with 1 token, then the second option, depending on what you choose, with the second token, and so on. Some upgrades can be only chosen once, others have multiple upgrades. When you lose a life, you lose them all, which is very frustrating. There are a few options to vary the game. You can select different difficulties and a number of lives, and renew, which changes whether you start from the same place you died or the previous checkpoint. While the previous checkpoint may seem odd, it does allow you to pick up an upgrade token or 2, which really helps for the bosses. The bosses have a pattern. Learn it, get your dodge on, and you'll take them up soon enough. Got a friend? As you know, my son is my only friend. There isn't Martin. And Son of Bill and I had a blast screaming at each other each time we died, and high-fiving each other like fighter pilots when we destroyed the baddies. I would play this again. I would tell my younger self to play it, and I would recommend it to a friend, even if they didn't like this genre, as this is a relatively short game, so it's worth a quick go. This game really surprised me. I'm not a fan of side-scrolling shooters. I find them too busy and too easy or too hard, with very little in between. But maybe that's because I give up too easily for the too hard games. I was warned by Martin that this game was tough, and he wasn't wrong. I changed the settings to very easy and maximum lives, and it still killed me more times than I would like to admit. But each time I played it, I got better. The game is fair, to a degree, in that every time I died, it was my fault. The game did nothing unfair to me. You've really got to get your head into these shooters. Once I was there, I found it hard to put it down. Definitely one to add to your list, and definitely one I will keep playing until I complete. As always, thank you for watching and or listening. Like, subscribe, comment, and tell your friend. Game over, man! Game over!
Oh yeah, now we're talking. It's time for what is genuinely one of my favourite PS2 games of all time that definitely doesn't get enough love. It's Gitaroo Man. Gitaroo Man is a very simple rhythm game that is wacky, has an awesome soundtrack, and some fun, challenging gameplay, which is basically all I need in a game. You play as a kid with a stupid name, which is U1. One day, you and your dog are chilling out when a monster alien thing shows up, causing havoc in your bedroom, and all of a sudden you're given a magic guitar called a Gitaroo, which transforms you into the music-making superhero Gitaroo Man. So you use your guitar to battle enemies in one-on-one music fights. The game's story is deliberately daft and played for laughs. The levels are tenuously connected. Each stage sees you fighting a monster or enemy through music. Well, except the one where you're playing for the girl you fancy, which is one of my favourite levels in a video game ever. But how does it all work? Well, it's easy really. There's a dot in the middle of the screen and you see a button prompt appear. Depending on the part of the level, you have to do different things. If you're in charge or attack phases, you have to press the circle button at the right time. But as well as this, you have to point the analog stick in the direction that the bar is going, sometimes needing to move in circles or waves. In charge mode, the more accurate you are, the more health you get. In attack mode, the better you are, and the more damage you do to your opponent. Then there's defense mode. This is where the enemy is attacking you. Here it's just button presses, and you'll see buttons appear on the screen and you have to hit them in time to the music when they get to the circle. If you miss them, you lose health. Lose all your health and you have to restart the level. It starts off easy, but it gets really tricky by the end, but it is perfectly beatable with a little bit of practice. Each level is its own song, and every one is a different genre, so you'll play through some rock, jazz, blues, electronica, even classical. It's really awesome, and one of the best soundtracks in a game that I've played. As you learn the songs, they do get easier, as of course all your button presses are in time to the music. Sometimes though, the timing does feel a bit off, and there were times where you'd swear you'd done everything right, but you still missed it. Thankfully, the game gives you a few opportunities to get your health back, and the tracks will loop if neither character has lost all their health. The graphics here are really cool too. As you play each level, a crazy movie plays in the background that goes along with all the action. This can make it hard to concentrate at times because you really want to watch what's going on, but that's the whole point. There's really not a lot to moan about with this game, as it really does what it sets out to do incredibly well. My main issue is that it's way too short. There's only about 10 songs, though you can go back and play on harder difficulties. Also, something that's bloody annoying is that you can't pause the game. Well, you can pause the game, but if you do, you have to restart the song from the very beginning. So basically, don't pause the game. Also, to load your game, you've got to go through the options, rather than just having the option to load your game from the start menu. Minor gripes, but kind of annoying. Other than that though, I really do love this game, and I highly recommend everyone plays through it. It only takes a couple of hours to get through, but it's a blast from start to finish, and every single song here is an absolute banger. If you like strategy games, then you might just like Goblin Commander Unleash the Horde. You are the Goblin Commander, and you're doing your usual Goblin things of mining for gold and causing fights when some annoying critters appear and get in the way, so you give them a good kicking. Then it turns out that the other Goblin factions are being dickheads, so you decide you've had enough and you set out to teach them a lesson and show them why you're the best. It's a strategy game, so you'll need to build bases, create units, upgrade the units, mine for resources, and of course battle other monsters. And this was made for consoles, so doing everything is nice and easy. You control the cursor on screen and you'll use this to select your units. All units can move, attack and smash stuff. Smashing stuff is how you get your resources here. You do get mini objectives within the levels, which are usually things like killing everyone, smashing everything, surviving for a certain amount of time and so on. Thankfully you get a decent selection of units with plenty to unlock as you play. There's actually a few factions in the game, and as you play through the story, the ones you defeat start to join you. You've got Stone Crushers, who are the ones you start with. These are your standard bruiser goblins and are pretty strong with melee attacks. As you play you'll get more, like the ones that throw stones, ones with bigger swords and so on. Then there's the Hellfire faction, who are the Fire Clan. You can probably guess their specialty. And you also get a third faction who use magic. Each clan is controlled separately and their units have their own properties and are better for certain situations. Each clan is also assigned to their own button on the controller, so it's easy to tell who to go where and to do what. Just point the cursor and press the button for that clan. Your units know exactly what to do all the time, so you don't have to worry about faffing around in menus. You can't mix and match your factions though, so it's also worth keeping in mind that all units from one clan always stay together at the same time. It would have been cool to mix them up, but I see why they've done it. You also get massive ogre units, which are huge hulking things that deal massive damage. They're especially good for smashing down buildings. One really cool feature of this game is that you can actually control individual units. You just point on them and press the triangle button and then you take control of that specific unit. When you're walking around, the rest of your army will still follow them, and you can use the analog stick to move them around, and you have a few different attacks you can use. And with some of the big units, this is really fun to do when you can even eat with smaller enemies to regain your health. The graphics here are decent, it's all 3D polygons and it all looks nice enough. It runs smoothly and there's often quite a lot going on. The maps are all varied and you'll reveal everything as you go, as you do in most strategy games with that crazy fog of war, but yeah, it works well. Overall, this game is just a really fun one, and you can really tell that it was deliberately made for consoles, which is excellent. It's got a good sense of humour, a great selection of missions, and it's a fair challenge. Worth a go if you like this sort of thing. And if you do like strategy games, then you'll probably want to check out GrimGriMoire. You play as a witch entering witch school, and as you're getting your lessons you find out that at night time evil monsters walk the halls. Now the teachers could get rid of them, but turns out they're a good way of keeping the kids in check at night time. But also as part of your lessons you'll need to battle them to learn skills. Now really the story is a little bit daft, and the game is very story heavy as well, with loads of lengthy text-based cutscenes, which do outstay their welcome a little bit if you ask me. But the gameplay is really good fun. I guess technically this is a tower defense game as you are defending a tower. At the start of each level you've got a few units that are basically your peons. There are also crystals in the levels. You'll need to get your peons to take control of the crystals. This lets you generate mana, which is used to do basically everything. The more crystals you have, the faster you build mana, the more units you can build, etc. You've also got portals, and you'll use these to summon various units. Now as you progress you get a ton of different units and a load of portals to use. Portals work the same as other various barracks in other strategy games, so depending on the portal you place down you get access to different units. You've got fairies, ghosts, phantom knights, flame things, massive dragons and so on. You can also create turrets, which are essentially just gun placements. All of these can be upgraded and there's plenty to unlock as you go as well. Every level works similarly in that you start somewhere on the tower, sometimes at the top, sometimes at the bottom, sometimes somewhere in between. And you've got to capture the crystals, get the mana and summon troops, because the evil monsters will be constantly spawning in and trying to kill your units. Lose them all and it's game over. Sometimes you just have to survive for a certain length of times, other times you have to destroy all the enemy bases and so on. The variety isn't particularly wild, but it's enough. Controlling everything can be a little confusing, but it doesn't take too long to get used to. You've got a pointer that you can press on units or portals to select them, and it's easy enough to build units and upgrade everything. You can use the shoulder buttons to cycle through units on screen, and the game does a good job of making it easy not to accidentally choose the wrong people. Attacking is all automatic, you just need to put your units somewhere near an enemy and they'll go to town on it. You can even set patrol routes, and this is important in keeping your crystals safe. As you can see, the graphics are all 2D sprites, but as this is a vanillaware game, it all looks bloody brilliant. The artwork is incredible, and it's their classic out of proportion people that people either love or hate, and I love it. The animation's great, and it's just a joy to look at. It's not all perfect though, it is incredibly slow to get going and you are forced to play through way too many slow tutorials that take more than an hour to get through. And while it's nice to have everything explained so thoroughly, they literally repeat the same things multiple times when it comes to controlling units. Units are basically the same to control, but the game makes you have a tutorial for each one. Why? But once you're past all that, the game itself is just loads of fun to play. Levels are long and can easily take 20 to 30 minutes to play through, but actually the time goes quickly. I don't think this game will be for everyone, but I really do like it, and I would definitely recommend. Back to some more direct action now. Here is GunGrave. Based on the anime of the same name that shockingly I've never seen, you play as the bloke who I assume is called GunGrave, and you rescue a girl and a scientist and help them to take down a military organisation that have taken over a city. It's a third-person action game. As the game kindly suggests, there's lots of guns here and a grave. I don't know the backstory here, but I'm actually pretty intrigued as to why you have this. This is a simple game. You walk along some quite linear levels and enemies will appear. You hammer the shoot button and fire your guns and kill everyone you see. Eventually you'll get to a boss, kill him and move on. The gunplay here is very simple, but in a good way. You don't have to really manually aim even, you just point yourself in the general direction of enemies and press shoot, and old Gravy will do the rest. You can move and shoot, but you'll walk slower, a lot slower in fact, while firing. You do have a dive button as well, which is great for dodging enemy attacks and also doing some cool dive shooting stuff. If enemies get too close to you, just press the R1 button and you'll swing your massive grave to do massive damage, killing most regular enemies in just one hit. The battles here are pretty frantic, with loads of enemies often being on screen at once. Thankfully you can take a fair bit of punishment. You've got a shield that recharges if you stop taking damage for a while, but your actual health bar can never be refilled. Well, unless it's between levels, but do be careful. And do try to take cover whenever you can. At first I actually felt like I was quite invincible, but after a few levels you realise you can quite easily be killed. Between levels you can talk to the doctor and woman that you rescued for some story bits. It won't surprise you that I didn't really bother with this, I'm all about the action. And that's what this game is all about. It's non-stop action and really good fun. The levels are very linear with literally one path to follow, but the arcade style, over-the-top action and relatively short levels actually make it quite hard to put down. The boss fights in particular are great, with massive enemies that have patterns and weaknesses to learn. The graphics here look incredible, with some awesome cel-shaded styles that really stand up and look crisp and clean, which is probably helped by my sexy new Steam Deck PS2 variant. There are a few frame rate dips here and there when you use your massive rocket launcher, which is your screen clearing attack, but it was nothing that noticeable. If you like mindless action that plays in short bursts, then this game would be perfect. And finally for today, here is Ghosthunter, another game which is genuinely in my top 10 PS2 games of all time. Here you play as the annoyingly named Lazarus. It's only annoying because it's just so unoriginal for a ghost hunting game. The actual character is pretty cool. You are a cop and you're investigating an old mansion that people have reported strange stuff happening in. You're there with your sexy lady partner cop, and as you're exploring you stumble across what is essentially the containment unit from the Ghostbusters films. Being an idiot cop, you accidentally free some very evil spirits and then have to spend the rest of the game getting them back before they take over the world. Oh, and of course your sexy lady cop partner thing gets kidnapped in the process. So yeah, the game is basically a rip-off of Ghostbusters, but it's a damn good one, so that's alright. You're thrown into some pretty massive levels that can take hours to complete. Each one is packed with ghosts that you have to capture, and this is loads of fun. As you're exploring, you actually happen to come across a gun that can also shoot ghosts. You'll use this to weaken them, and then you have what the game calls a ghost grenade, which is basically a magnetic trap thing that you throw at ghosts. It will stick to them, and you've got a timer. You have this long to deplete their life bar. Is it a life bar if they're already dead? I don't know. And then they're captured for good, and the grenade thing just comes back to you automatically. Some ghosts are easy, and you just need to shoot them and capture them, whereas others will require you to complete simple puzzles, collect items, or meet certain criteria before you can catch them. For example, there's a ghost that can only be captured while it's asleep, and it will run away if it sees you, so you've got to be all stealthy until it dozes off. This is really cool, and each level has its own massive ghost bosses as well, which always look really great, and they're actually pretty tough. The game has a really good spooky atmosphere. You do also have other weapons though, like you do have your regular pistol and shotgun. These can actually hurt some of the ghosts, which is a little bit odd, but most of the time shooting enemies with bullet weapons just makes them drop these weird orbs which act as ammo for your ghost gun, which is handy as it means you're never really running out of ammo for anything. You'll need to do loads of exploring, and the levels, which as I said are massive, are split into loads of areas where you'll meet all sorts of crazy characters, some good, some not so good, and some of them are even human. These characters really gave me vibes of the mental people from the Dead Rising games. You even have a sexy lady spirit that lives inside you, and at certain points of the game you'll need her to leave your body to do some astral planing shit to interact with world that you can't normally get to. This is because she can fly, and you'll need to pull switches and stuff like that, and catching ghosts upgrades her powers and unlocks new abilities for her. Graphically, this game is incredible, and it's some of the best I've seen on the system. The characters and ghost designs are great, and the models are all excellent and highly detailed. You really could see this as an early 360 game if you squint a little. You're given your missions in your notebook, and these come in handy to remind you what you need to do, but other than that there is actually very little in the way of direction here, which can mean that you run around the massive levels quite aimlessly for longer than you'd like. But when this game is good, it's really bloody good. And really that's all I need to say about this one. It's just a bloody good game that I definitely say is a must own for anyone with a PS2 or other ways of playing a PS2, like a Steam Deck variant. But anyway, check it out. So there you go, 10 games for the PlayStation 2 starting with the letter G that don't always get talked about. As always, there's a ton more that I could have included, so do let me know some of your favourites in the comments below. Now, all that's left for me to say is thank you for joining us, and we'll see you next time.